So, Dan, as you look ahead in the future of Web3, what do you anticipate will be some of the biggest challenges as well as some of the biggest highlights?
Yeah, so I think the challenges of Web3 are pretty familiar to everybody at this point, right? Scaling, privacy, and maybe closest to my heart is kind of readability and safety these days. Like this year, I've just been really thinking deeply about that, and it feels like until people are able to kind of interact with just a million different things, understand what they're doing, and have relative safety and privacy. Privacy is kind of part of the safety when they do it. Then we're not going to really have the promise of like digital contracts enabling a new generation of stuff, and we'll have fallen short of really what computers should probably be doing for us. So what are the challenges? I think the challenges are finding the protocols that allow us to meet that kind of trilemma, and I think that was that feeling that this is a hard problem was at the heart of originally working towards the SAP system. When we started, we could have just gone full, EVM maxi and just polished the heck out of its current state, and that is a way to go. But at the same time, the EVM allows for all this plurality of runtimes and different ways of representing things. And so, I hope that the people here and ourselves innovate on the protocols that allow people to do cool, creative stuff and understand what they're doing, getting some safety, and then hopefully hand it off to some automated bots that are benevolent and so they can, do a lot of cool stuff on our behalves, and we don't have to feel nervous about it as much. But yeah, so discovering those protocols, I think that's the hardest part, and that's what we're all here to do.
For sure. And highlights, what do you think will be
Highlights of what will be the hard part?
no, the highlights, cool things that are coming. What do you see?
Oh, yeah. So the Snaps team has like a very concrete roadmap of things that I think are going to be exciting, and we're going to talk about them all day. So I'm going to not step on those, and I'm going to do what I do best and jump a little bit further forward and talk about what I think is going to enable the next generation of Snaps even a year out from here. And so today, Snaps kind of have their hands tied in a lot of ways. You're registering methods by RPC, and you can talk to Snaps, but only also by this RPC. And so you're kind of like these little servers, kind of talking to each other in a stilted language. You can't interfere with the UI very much, but we're going to work on that. But there's this common set of things that at the wallet layer we're realizing is a common set of problems, which is like, what is the stuff the user cares about, and what do they want to do with that stuff? And we're starting to think that this is a common language that can actually not just allow us to provide good features from the wallet, but allow Snap developers to connect to dApps and to each other. So I think in a year from now, we're going to have an API that says something like, hey, Snaps, you don't have to register an RPC handler, because then you're like, you're like checking the URL and then building a permission system and then trying to reinvent transaction readability. And that's like, now we're just punting the problem, and that's still a hard problem. What I think we should do is we need to get it to where the Snap's job is to identify what are the valuable things in your protocol, and then wrap them up in a little object and pass them to us. And we're going to be like a little file manager of useful objects for the user, and we'll make the connection easy. And so that's one important thing. So making it so that there's kind of a unified interface for Snaps to say, here's what's important, and for applications to say, hey, I need something valuable. Because now you can have that handshake be privacy preserving. But also that same composition mechanism can be used in between Snaps, and it can work many hops. So one thing you don't see a lot of today is Snaps that are enabling other Snaps. So you could have a peer-to-peer file sharing Snap that other Snaps depend on as their data availability source. That would be hard to compose today by nature of the RPC thing. So every Snap would have to ask for permissions. It's like when you install the Snap, it's going to like ask you to install 5 other Snaps and then ask for permissions to each one of the Snaps. That's not acceptable. But what we've got now is we've got the groundwork. We've got this confinement engine. I think of it like an ice cube tray that we've laid. So we've done the hard work of getting that confinement for all the Snaps, and now what we're going to start doing is providing the wiring that lets all of those Snaps kind of like connect to the bigger thing, give the user direct hold of what they believe are valuable in a way that's inherently readable, and and then making those permission requests kind of transitive. So what that would mean, and sorry about this mic is weird, but it would mean that like when you install a snap, it might include the permission to install other snaps. And so up front, you might ask for some permissions that are needed for all of your dependencies. And so now an application getting set up for a user might just say, here's what I need to provide all my services to you. And snaps can kind of just install on the back end. And so you could have snaps that depend on snaps, but without the user burden of having to think about each individual one. I think that that's kind of the key to getting us to where snaps just feel invisibly part of the wallet experience. And it's not about like, is this snap a default of the wallet, or is this snap, does the user know, or does the user browse a directory or any of that? We can skip the discovery and put it right onto the point of connection, where the application can say, here's what you need to interact with me, and the user can say yes or no. And if they say yes, they're rolling, and they don't think about it again. To them, it's just another token in their wallet. And so we're building the kernel for that right now through a lot of our partnership with the Agoric team. And so that's something that I'm kind of turning my focus to lately. And so I think giving that wiring between snaps is something I'm really excited for in the coming year. And in the meantime, yes, it's going to be, snaps are going to be, you're working with RPCs, but we're going to give you as many useful APIs in the meantime as possible. And they're powerful. You're going to be customizing the UI. You're going to be able to, you're providing new account types. You're going to provide new asset types. So even within these constrained boundaries, I think we're going to do things that no wallet's done before, and then we're going to break the mold all over again. And so I'm excited about that.
Seamless user experience, for sure.
That's the goal, right? Yeah. Like that or bust. If we didn't think that was on the horizon, then we probably wouldn't bother with the detour, right?
For sure. Dan, what advice do you have for the builders that have already built the snap, it's out, it's launched, or that are currently building a snap?
Yeah, the number one thing, so some snaps are actually already just doing really good. I've gone through, I haven't installed all of them, which is a really thrilling and a terrifying thing to say. But I've installed some really impressive ones. So it's not like everybody needs this, but being a wallet, you're wallet developers now. So welcome. It's different than other kinds of development. Namely, you're kind of between the developer and the user, and you're kind of their lawyer, and you're helping broker this deal. So you're trying to minimize the friction on the dApp, but you don't want to let them, if it's a malicious dApp, though, you don't want to let them drain the user. So you're doing this weird, delicate balancing act. And so that readability is really at the central core of what we're doing. And I think a lot of, there's trends towards simulation and stuff like that today. And I think that you can't actually do better than just having protocols that are readable by default. If you know that's what a send looks like, if you know that's what an allowance looks like, if you can say concretely, I don't know what that looks like, that's scary, but here's everything useful and I can present it coherently, that's a huge gain. And I really, so my simplest advice is don't underestimate the value of readability. And we should probably just treat this like a support group, because we're all working on digital readability here, right? We're pushing the boundaries of it. The default before was just trust Apple, or just install and give user privileges to whatever you run. We believe we can do better than that, but we're pioneering what that means. And so permissions and hopefully transitive permissions are part of that.
Thank you. Excellent advice. I know a lot of builders really appreciate that. So when we're looking at security, wallet security, snap security, what steps do you feel are fundamental to ensure that there's a safe user environment, and how do you see snap builders playing a role there?
When you're building like an app or a snap?
A snap.
When you're building a snap, how do you make sure you have a safe environment?
Yes.
Like your system that you're developing on?
Yeah, ensuring that you're participating and that you are creating a safe user environment.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll just put aside the point I just raised, which was just like make sure what the user can do is readable if you can. And then, of course, there's the distribution pipeline, I guess. So yeah, keeping your computer, free of hacks. Like, yes, we currently have a pretty rigorous audit process to become a Snap. We're hoping to build this into a more fluid fabric where it's easier to get authorization. But that will also mean that, Snap developers, your machine is potentially, capable of updates and of pushing updates to users' computers. And, I think that we're hoping to make it so that snaps can be registered as smart contracts, so you can have multi-sig policies for updates. So I think we'll be trying to encourage everybody to use the best practices they can, and hopefully people will be getting authorized to kind of contribute as that's proven. But the long-term goal is, spread the ability to write software as widely as possible, and don't gatekeep. And that means that people have to be, good at keeping their own computers safe. So I don't know, don't open files from strangers on an email. I hope that's all just a joke and goes without saying for everybody here. But yeah, like basic security hygiene.
Yes, excellent. Other than Web3, what technology innovations are exciting you and why?
Well, I have been goofing off with that AR stuff from Apple, no lie. It's pretty weird. It's a really closed ecosystem, though. You can really feel it where it feels like iOS. Like I described the Ice Cube tray, right? Every app in that ecosystem is just in a little isolate, and they've got no intercommunication. So in that spirit, even our RPC handlers are like, it's like, if that was on the Apple thing, it'd be like, what? Oh my God, well, the things that are possible, because everything is its own thing. It's like a window. It's like infinite iPads or something. And so that's cool, infinite iPads. Wow, that's amazing. Put an iPad on everything. So that's, the future of that stuff is obviously full of potential, but it's either gonna be like just a bunch of individual experiences that are isolated from themselves and just like, you buy into that ecosystem. This is your note-taking app, or that one is, or this is your social media, or that is. Or we start building computing substrates that's designed for composition first. And that's just an entirely different model. And yeah, so I think that stuff is interesting. And obviously, AI, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know, I'm like an AI addict. It like goes without saying, it's like water, right? These days, I just make everything with a little AI. But yeah, all that, and AI too, I gave a talk at Istanbul that people can look up, but like, I also think that AI is assisted with this kind of composition. Like, the first thing you do when you start playing with AI is you're like, oh, cool, chatting is tedious, I want to automate some of this. Oh, how do I wire two AIs together? And then you're like, oh, do I have to install LangChain? Is LangChain the way to do that? And it's like, well, it doesn't support my local one, or it doesn't support the new, DALI thing, or, and you want to wire arbitrary systems together, right? You don't want to be held back. It's your computer. It's your software you're running. So again, another case where the default computing paradigm isolates everything by default, and just adding a big, nice, healthy dose of collaboration on top, like, it's supercharged. It lights the whole thing on fire. So that's what excites. Like, all these domains are super exciting on their own. And then when I look around and I see what we're doing, I'm just like, this is like electricity that just seems to light up everything that we pointed at. And so I can't wait to do some AI snaps, and I can't wait until we're running snaps on VR. I think it'll. I mean, believe me, I've been thinking through how it would work. But yeah, basically we would have to, if you wanted to run it on Apple, you have a whole new app. It's like an alternative browser. It runs in VR, right? Because their system doesn't allow you to intercompose. So you have to build an entire new thing on top. It's going to be a while. But, reach out if you're interested.
How do you see the collaboration with AI and blockchain?
Yeah, lots of ways that AI and blockchain are useful. I mean, obviously people want to try to make AIs do stuff for them, like how should I trade or whatever, and that's foolish. And I mean, you can do technical analysis, and maybe it'll be useful. And if you feed it enough of your own personal insight, maybe that could get useful, and that could be like a very powerful, volatile mix, right? If done right. But you want to do it really selectively. So again, if you're trying to mix those two, if you're trying to automate your financial behavior, like, it's the kind of thing you want to do so selectively, right? So cautiously. And that's the kind of cautious behavior that, again, a permissionless composition system is designed to address. So when I think about tying AI to my blockchain stuff, I think about how can I give it the most selective, deliberate access possible, and it brings me back again to, well, now I need a tool for selective consent between digital systems. And so, yeah, you can see my head's been in this for a little bit, so forgive me, I'm a little fried on that. But it's, I believe it is a truly powerful and missing component of computing.
Excellent. So this next question, I feel like you've already answered what really excites you, but if you ever turn off your brain from Web3, is there anything that you'd like to do that just to unwind and have fun?
Yeah. I actually, I've been kind of unwinding the last couple weeks. I kind of checked out of work a little bit, and yeah, I've been. You know, what I did is I organized my bookshelf. That's not exciting? It was very rewarding. Let me tell you,
exciting to you?
if you've got a box of books and then you start emerging the themes that have sculpted you, it was a fun experience. I don't know. I enjoyed that. Music. I like music of all sorts. I like listening to music. I play a couple instruments. I like live looping because I've got an improv background, so I like spontaneous stuff. And so I got one of those loopers, and looping is so fun. And yeah, once we've got all this stuff working really good, we're gonna make a social looping experience, and it's gonna be totally sick. But that's once this stuff is mature. We need pure real time, collaborative stuff working. So you gotta have your North Star, right? And if you don't have that, you might stop short. You might say, oh, 15 transactions a second is sufficient. It's like, no, we need 1,000 beats a minute, or like contributors, mixes, whatever, seamlessly evolving, sharing rights, licensing, et cetera, whatever.
Excellent, thank you. I think that takes us to the end of our time, but we want to make sure we get questions from the audience. So we can open it up to anybody. Have a first question for Dan? Do we have a mic?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to understand a comment that you had made about installing multiple snaps and dependencies. I'm trying to understand if you think that's something that's only capable through OCAP, or I'm trying to understand the limitation that JSON RPC is imposing on multiple snap connection. And also to make a comment on snap dependencies. Currently, it's something that we're researching, and it's pretty difficult because currently we only allow one version of a snap to be installed. So you can see how that can get really problematic.
Yeah. Is this on? Yeah. This one's got very different qualities. Okay. Yeah, there probably are ways of addressing it with JSON RPC, but I would suspect they have hazards like that singleton problem you described. So for example, if I gave a flat set of permissions to an application to install many snaps, that now becomes a flat authorization. There's no expression of how the application might have different levels of trust for different snaps that it might install. And it might not give it the option to attenuate the permissions it's giving to other snaps. So like, I'll give like one example, would be like, I might have a snap like, maybe I'm Tornado Cache 2, and maybe I need you to have like a little private proxy server. Like, I don't want you to go through Infura. I want to suggest a little a state channel net, or a light client or something to install. And so I need to get you to install the light client. I need to get its provider, and now I need to pass that provider to your wallet, like instead of the provider it would normally use. So being able to treat one snap as like an attenuation for like an alternative to the permission you would otherwise grant to one. That's an example where we're composing multiple snaps to like create an alternate trust context that I don't think you can get with like a flat RPC-based permission system.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any idea how far along we are with our OCAP kernel?
So, I mean, I love to go into this. So the work that we've been doing with Agoric has been very fruitful. Like, obviously, the compartments that snaps are running in today is built on it. The stuff that allows compartments to compose together by sharing objects, that technology already works, with some caveats that those references that we pass, they currently die between restarts. And so we're currently working on the technology to allow those permissions to be resilient or sturdy references. So we might do something like rush out an early version where the permissions only last as long as the session. I'd love to hear if people think that that would be good enough for like some period of innovation. Maybe that is. And then the stuff that is like really on the very bleeding edge that we're working very hard on, and this also goes to our work with Sprightly, is how do you make those references sturdy? And then if those are sturdy, can they be a distributed server? And then how do you debug like a fully distributed system? And I really recommend looking up Sprightly's debugger for that stuff. Like they're actually making what I think is the nicest distributed debugging experience that I've ever seen. And it'll be available for this kind of system that we're building towards. So that will be very cool. And I don't know if it's worth the wait. Like maybe we should ship like these more incremental things, because we do have stuff we could ship in the meantime sooner.
Yeah, we're thinking about it iteratively too, but I just feel like with the OCAP kernel, everything is going to be so much easier. A lot of the features that we're thinking about that we're having a lot of issues with, it would solve a lot.
Yeah. I often feel like when we were going through like the multi-network connection, for example, we were like, oh, what does it mean to connect a site to multiple networks? And then what we started coming to was like, I kept on noticing, oh, if we had the OCAP kernel already, you would just ask for some assets, and you would just pass objects that represent each asset the site wanted, and then we just have those objects. And now the site didn't ask for networks, and it didn't ask for accounts. And so we got the interface up to this very human level. It was just delightful. And so, yeah, I suspect there's lots of examples like that, right? Probably everywhere you look, there's probably little things where it's like, this is a lot harder than it needs to be right now.
Yeah.
How hard do we want to hit our heads against the wall because this wall is currently here, versus like maybe let our brows heal for a minute while we tear down the wall.
Yeah, things are going to be tough with Cape 25 in our current permission system.
Yeah, it's going to be a little strange, but also it keeps things moving. I don't know. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's do 2 more questions. Raise your hand if you have any questions. So is it good? Okay. Oh yeah, in the back. Let me do some sports.
Can you dumb down for me a little bit the snaps talking to each other? So like, say that I have messages in one snap, and then another snap wants to read those messages. Is that what you're talking about? And then like, do the messages have to leave the snap?
That could be something you could compose with the system I'm describing. So I am talking about like at the JavaScript object level, like you should be able to pass an object into our kernel and say, this is a special thing the user might want to provide to a website. And you might provide a type definition too that makes it easier for the site to request that. Now it could be a message. So you could be a chat protocol. If you're a chat protocol, I don't know if this is coming through very well. You might say, hey, I'm a chat protocol, and here is the user's inbox, and here are the individual messages in the inbox if you think that requesting individual message access might be a meaningful act of consent. And now websites will have a simple type they can request. So instead of saying, hey, ETH accounts, or wallet request accounts, you'd say wallet request special thing, and then you provide your type definition that says something like, I'm looking for social media messages because I'm a social media front end and I want to show all your latest messages. And then the user could choose to or not. And now you could have a peer-to-peer social media system where many sites could display the same messages that are all being cached locally in the user's wallet, for example. Does that frame it in reasonable response to your question?
Yeah, so the messages don't have to leave the wallet or the Snap environment.
Right, they don't have to. It's the kernel is 100% a tool for the snaps to kind of offer, things to allow the user to orchestrate between them. So it's by default, all snaps are confined. They get all the secrets they want, basically, and then we're providing the tools to let them kind of provide the user with more deliberate optionality.
That's cool, thanks.
Cool.
One last question. No more question? Okay, cool. So, thanks everybody. Big round of applause.
Cool. Thanks all. Thanks a lot.